And now you want to tax our children because you're putting your hands in the pockets of our children. Because the biggest consumer of bread are our children in secondary school, because that's where they spend their pocket money.
Do we drop by the 10 billion from the NGCDF? Do we drop 500 million from the NGAF amount? Or do we drop 15 billion that was allocated, extra 15 billion that was allocated to the counties? That should be the question that we should be talking about.
And therefore, any responsible government would be looking at ways to lessen the tax burden on Kenyans, not to increase it.
Last year, we passed a finance bill here, which is a Finance Act of 2023. How much money have we collected using that? We did not reach our target. Now that is a proof that higher taxation that does not yield to higher revenues, Mr. Speaker.
That was Parliament yesterday. Since Tuesday, they've been discussing the finance bill, Gituku. Today, there was a vote. The bill is moving to the next phase, the next step. Tell us a bit about what's been happening the past couple of days in Parliament.
All right. So something happened on Tuesday that was, I think, I found it very interesting. That morning when Kenya Kwanza was at the parliamentary group meeting in State House. And it's a meeting that was supposed to happen the previous week on a Monday, I think. But then it was postponed to now this week. And then you see the statement by Kimani Ichung'wah and Kuria Kimani talking about the concessions that have been made, which also was criticized by several members, especially from the minority side, of them asking, how can you be reading the concessions to the Finance and Planning Committee from State House at a parliamentary group meeting? And it showed as if there was an agreement that indeed we've had Kenyans, and I remember hearing them say, and even on post on social media, saying that Kenya Kwanza is a listening administration, William Ruto listens. But then the following day, which is yesterday is Wednesday, right?
Yeah, yesterday.
During the debate, then you hear what you just had there.
Yeah.
Some of the members of parliament from the majority side saying that if we cut these tax provisions or proposals, we are going to lose 200 billion shillings, and this is the impact that you're going to lose certain monies that are going to the counties, going to the CDF kitty. I found that pretty interesting, and I saw someone saying that this is like gaslighting Kenyans because you cannot now start making people feel guilty for what they have been asking for, because in the first place, they were opposed to some of the tax measures because they're looking at how it's going to affect them. Now, with the members of parliament debating, very heated debate. I think last year, the finance bill of 2023 had less debate. I think it was just one afternoon.
Yeah.
This time around, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, indicated there was going to be debate Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, and then in the afternoon there would be a vote. In fact, in the afternoon session, there were still a few MPs that were allowed to debate, just showing you the level of interest that was in this matter. But then again, last night, you see a letter coming through from the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary, that is Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, to the Clerk of the National Assembly, indicating the several areas that they are looking at. Because of the said proposals, they are saying we might lose 200 billion shillings in revenue targets, and then lists areas that are supposed to be cut. And actually, he didn't get to the 200 billion shilling mark. So he said by 21st, which is tomorrow, Friday, there would be a further list that shows that these are all the areas that we are proposing. If you reduce the tax revenues, the targets themselves, then also you may want to change the appropriations bill and reduce the expenditure by 200 billion shillings. So it is very interesting that you have to look at that. Then the details of what exactly are you cutting.
Yeah.
It is help. Yeah. It is resources for medical interns. These are people that were actually on strike for more than a month, nearly 2 months, I think.
Yeah. The JSS teachers?
3.7 billion shillings had been allocated for that effect. To that effect, the JSS teachers, the interns themselves, had been on a strike. They had staged some demonstrations for some few weeks, and they won because they were told that now you're going to get permanent and pensionable terms employment. Then again, you come and say, and in fact, on Tuesday, the statement by the Kenya Kwanza Parliamentary Group indicated that the allocation for JSS interns to become permanent and pensionable teachers was going to be enhanced by some 5 billion shillings, moving from 13.5 billion shillings that was read by CS Njuguna Ndung'u on Thursday last week to 18.5 billion shillings now on Tuesday. The following day, which is Wednesday evening, the same CS from the same administration is writing to Parliament and telling them, we want to defer the employment of these interns on permanent basis. So I don't know what that is supposed to mean to the members of parliament. And I remember the minority leader, Opiyo Wandayi, raised the question on the floor of the House this morning, saying that he looks at that letter and he feels like this is intimidation of the National Assembly. These are like instructions from the National Treasury, warning them that if you take a certain action, this is going to happen. But then again, you saw the communication from the chair in the afternoon saying that this is something that has happened over time. And indeed, this is just FYI, for your information, to the Finance and Planning Committee, to the Budget and Appropriations Committee, to the plenary, so that whatever decision you take, you're aware of what the consequences would be. But I'm just wondering, Mheshimiwa, you can help us walk this journey.
He was shaking his head. I mean, because parliamentary procedure.
When you were interviewing the chairman of Finance Committee here a couple of days ago, yesterday, was it actually?
It was on Tuesday night.
He said the effect of those proposals that they had agreed at State House would be around 60 billion. That's what he said.
Yes.
National TV here.
Yes.
And then Treasury comes up with 200 billion, which clearly means that it's not about trying to find how to fill the gap of the 60 billion, but trying to bring some more punitive measures. It's clearly, I saw the Treasury's message as being simply, showing the Kenyans the middle finger.
Yeah.
You guys, you want to do that? You'll pay for it. Look, we have a budget of 4 trillion. Why do you want to focus on those critical ones, the most vulnerable areas? The elderly, you're going to deduct fertilizer, subsidy, school feeding program. It's deliberate. Yeah. And this is why I said earlier, if the government misreads the mood of the nation, they will be paying a heavy price. This seems to be one of those concerns when the government seems to think that, they know better than everyone. They just, they've become tone deaf. You develop thick skin. You simply don't seem to care what people are saying. And I think this is dangerous. I think it's dangerous for the country because these things could spiral out of hand. It's easy to say that, there are some Gen Zs who are on the streets. Yeah. But what if other people join tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Yes. What if the rest of the, it will be out of hand, and the situation would be difficult to control. So I think government needs to respect the people, because that is why they are there. And taxes, by the way, government does not have the mandate to tax people. It is through the representation of people. It's the people who must decide how much they want to pay for tax. That's why we have a parliament, by the way. So it's a pity that our members of parliament have failed in that obligation. They should be telling the Treasury to get lost. In fact, I thought when I saw that thing, if it gets to the House today, those who will start contributing will say Treasury can go hug a transformer. You can go get lost, because look, we have decided we are going to do this, and it's up to the Parliament committee to sit down and find out. Take a pen and pencil, go through the printed estimates. Yeah. You have got 2.6 trillion that will go into recurrent expenditure. Go there and find out where you can look for that 60 billion. Mm-hmm. But to allow Treasury to write to Parliament, and the Speaker stands there to read it and tells members, this is just an advisory. I mean, that really was the lowest Parliament could ever get to.
And we should have read the mood, I think, Linus, before you come in. On Tuesday, maybe we should listen to Leader of Majority Kimani Ichung'wah speaking at State House about choices having consequences.
Yeah.
They will definitely have consequences. As we were once told, choices have consequences. We have chosen to sacrifice as a part of our revenue yields, and therefore something has to give in. We should be able to see the total impact in terms of the revenue yields that we expected from this finance bill and adjust the budget accordingly. For instance, we do away with 50 billion shillings worth of tax revenue. Then we have to do away with, for instance, 50 billion out of CDF or out of the shareable revenue between the national government and county governments, or probably forgo the hiring of teachers or forgo the provision of food to school children under the school feeding program, forgo a project here and there, the roads you want done in your constituencies. I mean, there are choices that we have to make. So the long and short of it, Lato, is that we can't have our cake and eat it at the same time.
Wow, reading the mood, not reading the mood. Let's listen to Ndindi Nyoro talking about what would happen if the bill fails on Tuesday.
If it doesn't pass, the appropriations bill which is being passed next week to be passed through this, using these amendments and reductions. And I've told you, sir, from where I sit as the chairman of budget, this letter made my heart sink.
Okay, you talk about how school feeding program, school infrastructure developments losing money. You're talking about GSS intern teachers. You're talking about the medical interns. You're talking about the money for the elderly. And then the executive office of the president could lose up to 451 million shillings, okay? Out of the 5.1 billion it was located. In fact, when you look at the list that was sent last evening, this was the least amount of money that was going to be cut, 451 million. Out of a possible 5.1 billion, the executive state house was going to lose about 500 million. Linus, as he said, it's showing people the middle finger. Someone else said it's like they're throwing a tantrum. Munatusumbua, munafanya maandamano, munapiga kelele sana, basi ndo hivyo sasa. Is this the right way to handle this? Because as he said, as Bill Okello said, he don't care what affects people.
And I'll take you back again to the events of this week and to the point that the Honorable Kero is making, which is reading the room. And I want to draw an example from the 1997 IPPG process. IPPG, that is the inter-parties parliamentary group, was something that was forced on the Moi government by civil society action. There was the National Constitution Executive Council, NCEC, led at the time by Professor Kivutha Kibwana and Mr. David Lamba. And it had energy, the kind of energy you've seen this week. And I remember among the youth at the time that were in that process is Cecily Mbarire, who is now the governor of Embu. And through mass action, because that's the first time really Kenyans started using the word mass action, which meant mass action meant coming out and demonstrating, and so that you get the government to move a certain direction. There are two things here. The first thing is I heard the majority leader talking about things to forego. He doesn't mention corruption. Corruption is the first thing we really need to forego as a country. I find budgetary numbers the most dishonest conversation that we have in this country, because wastage and corruption is a key plank of our political life. This is what makes politicians fight during elections. They have to win because they have to make money and build something they keep calling a war chest for elections. And war chests for elections are built not on hard work, but on diverting public funds, diverting taxes to private hands. That is how politicians end up with billions that then they roll out during elections, and they have what they call a strong war chest. Now, these are some of the things I see this new spirit in town from the younger generation coming to question, where now they might start holding politicians to strict account, where your wealth, because we've had this wealth declaration things not working at all, but imagine Gen Z is saying, explain your wealth. Explain how you got where you are. And this should scare politicians. Finally, Jamila, on the question of what both the majority leader and the chair of the budget committee were talking about, if that is the attitude, remember something else that is happening right now. With the Gen Zs at play, what if the opportunity to have a conversation as members of parliament has actually just been lost? And it's possible. Because these young people have been saying, no, you are not amending it. No, you are rejecting it in total. That was not the conversation in parliament. And what have we seen in the past 2 days? We've seen politicians, rubbing hands and trying to look nice to the Gen Zs that, we're the good guys, I'm different and all that. Because they know here is a team, here is a generation that is suddenly is controlling the momentum. So if Parliament doesn't reason on Tuesday when the bill comes to the vote, what I see is the future conversation will be had between not the government and not between fellow politicians, but between the government and the Gen Zs, who have demonstrated in the last 3 days that they are capable of organizing, they are capable of bringing things to a standstill, and they're capable of forcing you to listen to them. So if reason doesn't prevail next week, those are the people. And just a reminder, Jamila, we don't even know who leads them.
Yeah,
so who is that you'll talk to?
Hakuna, huwezi kumwita umwone kando. Yeah, will reason prevail next week? Because if you look at the trends today, 204 members of parliament voted to pass it to the next stage. 115 were opposed to the bill. The government has the majority in the House. Kenya Kwanza and all the parties that are affiliated to it, including ANC and UDM, which is in a northeastern province. So was it all this for nothing? Because if trends go as they have been, come Tuesday, this finance bill will probably pass.
Likely, quite likely that that will be the trend, because they take their cue from the president. I mean, they don't just vote because they vote independently or because they represent me and you or their constituents. I think what's happening in Parliament now is they vote on party lines, and the decision of the party is made by the head of the leader of the party. This is why when the committee did their report, they had to fast. Their port of call was not Parliament; it was the State House. So, I think we should also not forget that there is also a third party that is behind all these things, the IMFs and all those. You've seen the way they have said, we want that bill passed. They're really behind it, and because they believe that they have given government loans and the government must be able to pay back. And they think that if these taxes are not approved, then government will probably not be able to pay. So I find it very unlikely that the voting pattern will change. However, what is critical is whether the president or the government will backtrack on those proposals that they have announced to the nation, because these things were, it's not only to those people who are demonstrating, it is the industry, the businesses, and to all the people who gave their views and who are told, okay, we have taken on board, and this is the outcome of our public participation, and it was announced with all Kenyans. So it would really be very disastrous if that happens, because never, I've not seen a situation where government would say this is the amendments you're going to do, and then when it comes to the committee stage in Parliament next week, because that is when they'll do it clause by clause, then they start saying, no, this one we have, that's the biggest worry, because that's when you can sneak in anything you want. And you've seen this fuel levy, the way it just came in. It was not in the bill. It was not part of it was not subjected to public participation. And then it's some of the things that can easily be challenged, by the way, in court. Because if it's something that you just bring in without any public participation, it was not there in the bill originally, it can be challenged in a court of law. And so they can do that kind of thing. They know where they can get the money, and so they can bring in some clauses anytime. By the way, anyone can bring an amendment. And those who are likely to get the amendments probably passed are those in government. And so the government is smart. They can say, we are not the ones who are bringing an amendment, but a member of parliament who is aligned to the government can bring an amendment, a motion. And members will just vote for it and say, sorry, it's parliament.
And it's interesting they can do that. Yeah, just introduce an amendment.
Yeah.
But remember, even the 2023 finance bill, now it's the law, has not really been fully implemented to date, Gituku. Yeah, bado kuna vitu pale ambavyo bado havijapendekezwa na havijapitishwa havijatekelezwa. And here we are talking about the 2024 one. And I was speaking earlier to one of the experts we had here, and he talked about how the places that this money that wants to be cut should be cut from. We talk about corruption, we're talking about travel, expenses, training, renovation of offices, some of the things that the CS did say in the budget that, hakuna kuajiri watu for the next 1 year, hakuna renovations of office, trainings zitafanyika mahali fulani. You know, all those things.
Those are the areas you should have.
Exactly, that's where they should have cut.
Right, and I think the confusing thing is exactly what the difference between Tuesday and today, and also yesterday. So you would have thought that the difference is just Wednesday, but there are a lot of things that have happened in between, to an extent that if the chairperson of the Budget and Appropriations Committee says that his heart sank when he received that letter from the National Treasury, what exactly is he saying? Because he was at that meeting in State House alongside other chairpersons of different committees and the leader of majority. And they're the ones who announced that because they are listening administration, they are going to do with the VAT on bread. They're going to do with the motor vehicle tax because it doesn't fall under income tax. They said they are going to do with eco-levy for imports, and actually to waive that eco-levy even for imports for products like diapers, because they don't want to affect the prices of critical products. Their words, not mine. They also said that they're going to do with the VAT on financial services. They're going to do with excise tax on vegetable oil. They said it themselves. They knew the impact for sure. Whether it was political impact or also the revenue impact, they knew it. So when they speak the way they are, saying that we shouldn't have to lose the expenditure for roads, when the president says that, tell your member of parliament to pass this so that we can get resources for JSS, for help, for building your roads, I mean, that is what is appearing to be blackmail, because then if they are committee recommended these amendments, and the report I saw myself is that it's talking about the concessions, what the public participants said, and what the position, the observation of the committee, and the recommendation. So if they will be recommending some of these amendments, because the deadline was today at 1 p.m., will those amendments be there to make sure that some of these taxes are not included? And if they are there, will there be goodwill to ensure that the 204 people that have voted to proceed or to move, to progress this bill from second reading to the Committee of the Whole House, will they be in the House to support those amendments? Or are we going to see a situation where the amendment has been moved, but there are not sufficient numbers to approve it? Because then if there are no sufficient numbers to approve it, the original provision will hold, meaning that the VAT on bread may still take effect. But I'm also concerned by some of the issues, for instance, when they said that counties, what is the word? The equitable share of revenue is going to be reduced by 5 billion shillings. At a time that you've already passed the Division of Revenue Bill, it's an act actually, you've passed the County Allocation of Revenue Act. So this is already assented into law. It guides how resources are supposed to be distributed. It also says that if there's a challenge with the revenue collection, it is going to be borne by the national government. That's what the law says. It is not the counties. So when you indicate there that you want to reduce that allocation, what exactly are you trying to do? Yet the arrival at 400.1 or 0.01, whatever it was, billion shillings, was arrived at after a mediation between the Senate and the National Assembly. How do you undo all that? The other thing that I would want to mention about is, even as you talk about what exactly needs to happen in the coming days, what are you doing to the pending bills? Because you're saying that you want to scratch 5 billion shillings. You're saying that help will be taken away. This affects Generation Z. They're the ones who are in school. You're talking about the feeding program. It's going to Generation Z as well as Generation Alpha. They're the ones that are born after 2012. The GSS interns, majority of them are Gen Z. So are you punishing them for what they said? Kimani Ichung'wah says that you can't have your cake and eat it. How about bread?
But that is, you know, strange. You are the one who came up with the proposals to amend the finance bill and announced it very in public. Yes, you know, very, very grand function. The entire government was there, UDA, with the party leader and everyone, that, look, we have listened to Kenyans, we are a listening government, and we have looked at the whatever, a very, very nice statement, and people are really said, oh, why, these guys have done well. And then now it's like, but you're going to see. You're going to pay a price for that.
Yeah.
And you now bitterness. You are clearly displaying the bitterness, and you're going to, the vengeance is going to be on those critical areas that will hurt. The counties will hurt. CDF will do this. I think it's really very clearly. It means then that meeting where they had said we have looked at all things and we have proposed was completely misleading in the first place. Because if you were really, and you had it in heart that you wanted to make those amendments, why are you punishing people now? Why are you crying for? And you're the one who came up with it. It's not Kenyans who said, let's remove this. You're the ones who have the mandate. You could have said from the word go, we are not going to make any amendments. But you went and announced and said, we are going to make the amendments. A day later, now you come out gun blazing and saying you're going to pay a price. Yeah. It's threatening Kenyans.
There's something I wanted to mention. What is that? To mention. A member of parliament is saying, Vox Populi, Vox Dei. I mean, voice of the people is voice of God. Yeah. That President William Ruto promised Kenyans that their voice will be heard and taken into account. Following the extensive amendments and concessions, I have today voted yes to the Finance Bill 2024. We have a solemn duty to build Kenya, and goes ahead to detail some of the things that are inside the bill, the finance bill. This is extremely misleading because no amendment has been moved in that house. To say that you're supporting the bill because of the amendments that have been passed by the house, you shouldn't do that.
Some of them said, subject to the amendments, we will vote yes. Some of them who know the rules.
Yes, subject to
and that's the way it should be. That if there are no amendments next week, you don't see it on the order paper. You can say, sorry, me, when it comes to the third reading, you can refuse to vote.
Yeah. Linus, as you wind up, he said something that's made me think about whether these guys actually read and understand what's in those finance bills. Ama nile mambo ya kama fulani amesoma, ni sawa tu, we'll vote according to that. Because when you look at what Gituku was talking about, who will be affected by this? You talk about the JSS teachers, you talk about the vulnerable and the old, you talk about the students in school, you talk about that thing of they don't know what's going on. How do situation kwa ground iko vipi? And then now, ni kama unapaka watu mafuta kwa mgongo wa chupa, that's what Swahili says. You do not announce what they did, Peupe State House after a meeting, and then come back around and almost say the exact opposite. It's like there are no consequences, or even if they are, it doesn't really matter. Like, tutafanya tu kitu tunataka kufanya, the last 3 days notwithstanding.
Let me borrow that analogy of the buck stopping on the president's desk when it comes to decisions. When it comes to this finance bill, and honestly the whole question of the economic direction of the Kenya Kwanza administration, sometimes I feel like the buck is wandering all over the place. Some milk it along the way, others ride it, others try to domesticate it. It's all over the place. And that is one of the enduring lessons out of just how this finance bill has been handled. You can clearly see the absence of a coordinated and harmonized position in terms of what it should look like eventually, which is a very, very sad thing, because then how do you trust it? How do you trust what you hear? I mean, this desk alone, if it were to speak in terms of the number of conflicting positions that have been given to us about the bill and the general economic direction, it would be saying very interesting things. And now to the blue letter that we saw yesterday to Parliament. Now,
you need to mention, Linus, it came at around 9:50, 9:30 p.m.
Yes, and remember I said, hey, hold on to it, because is it genuine? Check the signatures, check everything. Because there was a meeting yesterday in State House, and there was no question as to where the bill should be heading. It should be amended. There is a blackmail document, and that is really, in terms of optics, I hope somebody in government is not feeling right about it. Government is supposed to be the adult in the room. It's like the parent in a home, a father. And then you issue a 2-page threatening your kids that now you're going to lose your shoes, you're going to lose your shirt, you're going to lose your bedsheet, you're going to lose your mattress, and all that. That is blackmail. And Bill Okero is the expert here. I don't know whether blackmail can be a strategy in raising revenue. I don't know. I don't think it works.
Well, if Parliament was independent, and was carrying out his mandate the way it's required by law, no, that letter would be thrown in the dustbin. That's what would happen normally and ideally in Parliament, because the executive cannot tell Parliament, which has the mandate under the new constitution to actually do the budget. They cannot tell them that. But, you know, we have, Parliament has put itself where it is now, so a letter is sent. I do remember when I was chairman one time, Finance Committee in Senate, a letter came from Office of the President, specifically from State House, regarding this formula for distribution of, and I knew it was one of the governors from Central who was pushing it. And the letter was delivered to me in the committee meeting, saying that, you know, certain regions, the locations you are doing is not. So I looked at the letter and said, what? Somebody is writing? How can the State House write a letter to Parliament asking us to review the way we are doing things? I told the committee in front of the review, I just persuaded them in the dustbin. I said, this is completely unacceptable. This is what we expect Parliament really to do. They should not entertain, but it would really be embarrassing if after they went and told the Kenyans that we are going to make these amendments, they go back on it again on Tuesday.
Yeah.
No, that would be the height of hypocrisy. I think that would now create more anger on the streets. And probably, you know, it's not going to be a very good future. I tell you, we should be worried.
Gituku, umesikia hypocritical if they go back.
Indeed. So the last line of that letter, that communication by the Speaker of the National Assembly says, I therefore find nothing untoward with the advisory. Its contents may be used for the information of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, the Finance and National Planning Committee, and the House in plenary, and during the Committee of the Whole, considering both the Appropriation Bill and the Finance Bill. And I'm just wondering, it will be used like what? To do what? Because if you're amending the Finance Bill, or you're considering Finance Bill at the Committee of the Whole House, you're dealing with the bill itself, the report of the Finance and Planning Committee, and the proposed amendments as contained in the order paper. This letter cannot be part of those three documents.
Yeah.
And secondly, if this becomes the trend, that despite an elaborate process of budget making and passing of tax laws, the executive can jump in at any stage.
Yeah.
So what precedence is that the country will be setting? Last week, Cabinet Secretary for Transport and Roads, Kipchumba Murkomen, was before the Finance and Planning Committee. And he was there because MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies were appearing before different committees, including the Finance Committee, to give their views upon the public participation that was just about to conclude. So this letter, where is it? Is it now, is it last week? Is it today? Is it next week when it can be used for the plenary? And something else that I want to mention is about what CS Murkomen was doing in the House at the committee last week. And he was persuading the members of Parliament to consider raising the road maintenance levy by 7 shillings, from 18 to 25 shillings a litre of petrol and diesel. And the Finance and Planning Committee has actually made a recommendation to raise it by 7 shillings. It is in the report. But the chairperson is saying that now you cannot amend that regulation that talks about the 7 shilling addition on the fuel levy through a finance bill. It can only be done by the Cabinet Secretary, gazetting, go through public participation. So there's a confusion.
No, that one is not true. You see, the fuel levy is an act of Parliament. Road maintenance fund levy, road maintenance levy act is an act of Parliament that came in 1993. And you remember we started with 3 shillings. And so over the years they have been adjusting it. So if they have to make an amendment, it has to be an amendment to that act. And from last year, what we have seen, the government has made amendments to various acts of Parliament through the Finance Bill, which is unusual. That's why Umtata and others went to court last year on that issue. Ideally, if you want to make those kind of amendments to a number of legislation, you should use the miscellaneous amendment bill, but not Finance Bill. But last year they did that. So it's quite likely they will bring in that amendment. It will, like they did last year to NHIF, and several of the acts were amended through the Finance Bill. So they will. So the Finance chair was obviously misleading Parliament. They'll do it through that same bill. That's why it's in the report.
So you can imagine all that that is happening at such a time that we're having all these conversations. So I think in the end it speaks to vigilance by members of the public to even watch what Parliament will be doing next week, because it's going to be very critical. And I was just wondering, isn't it just possible because I spoke to someone earlier today, and they were saying that whatever the resources they have lost as a department, it will come back in supplementary budget, in Article 223, because after the passage of this bill, you can actually spend and claim that it was an emergency.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering, why is it so important to bring the letter from National Treasury, yet you can pass the laws as they are,
then
along the way, bring a supplementary budget to say that we are not going to get the targeted revenue as we had anticipated, and therefore we're proposing to do a supplementary budget, revise our expenditure by this much.
Yeah.
All those opportunities available for the government, really.
Linus, we are winding up. Final thought?
Bottom-up oversight.
Okay.
That is what is happening. And down the history of the country, I think the events of this week will be appreciated. And I repeat myself by just painting the scenario as it is. A defeated opposition in Parliament, a Parliament that is captive to the executive. Remember, basically all these decisions about the finance bill are really coming from the executive. And as Honorable Kera has put it correctly, the Parliament is not what it used to be. So these youth come up, and they are demanding to be heard. And look at the many approaches they're using. First of all, they have made it clear, if as a member of Parliament, you have voted for this bill as is, consider yourself, consider yourself the next immediate former MP of your constituency. I don't see that as a joke. Yeah. After especially watching just how they are able to organize, that they are down to the constituencies today. It means if that momentum is sustained, like I said at the beginning, the election of 2027 is already very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we wind up, as we finish, I think Parliament needs to remember that it's a separate arm of government. Members of Parliament were elected by the people, for the people. And one thing I think the last 3 days has taught us is Kenya is watching. So come Tuesday, remember Kenya is watching, remember Gen Z are watching. Thank you for watching the News Gang tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Keep the conversation going. Our hashtag is News Gang. Keep talking to us. And thank you, as always, for keeping us company. It's almost midnight, and you're here with us, and you don't take it for granted. Do have a blessed night. Thank you.